I'm Timmy Pierce, Executive Director of the Historical Society of Carroll County. And I had the great good fortune to meet a lovely lady a couple of weeks ago who just had to be interviewed for this oral history. Her name is Mrs. Russell H. Morgan, known as Kitty. And it was Russ Morgan who started WTTR, our very own voice of the community, a while back. When was it, Kitty, that you actually started the radio station?
I think it was 1953.
And how did your husband come to make this decision?
Well, he always wanted to sort of run a radio station and be mostly, well, he wasn't 50% quite, but he was interested in radio, sort of having a little bit of his own.
And he started at another station in Baltimore, was it?
Yes, he built WBMD.
Aha! So he already was experienced
Yes. And
in
before we
building
came
stations.
to Baltimore, he worked for a radio station in Fairmont, West Virginia for 8 years as an engineer.
Okay.
Yes, that's how he came to
So
be
he
at
certainly
WBMD.
had all of the background to know how to put one
yes.
together.
Yes.
And we do know, of course, that he passed away in 2005 after an automobile accident, which was very sad.
Down in South Carolina. We were going to Florida for the winter. We have a home down there.
Oh, well, a real shame. Now, the old tower, the original tower?
Yes, was called Old Betsy. And when I come into Westminster, I'll say, Russ, there's Old Betsy.
Was she named for anybody in particular?
No,
or
it just
yeah,
came
that
out.
was your Old Betsy.
Yes, that's the middle one.
Yeah, and I know when we talked a couple of weeks ago, you had said, well, you didn't have much to do with the station. That was Russ's baby, but
yes, I
think you had more to do with it than you tell.
I kept the home fires burning.
Okay, but how did you come down with poison ivy?
Well, I helped Russell. I always did have to help him do things. They were doing the ground wire, laying the ground wire for the tower, and I went way over, and in there was a lot of poison ivy, and I had the worst. I had to go to the doctor.
Oh, gosh.
I had it in my eyes and in my mouth and everywhere. So I try to stay away from poison ivy.
I'm surprised you didn't name the tower Old Ivy.
Well, yes, that would have been a good name, wouldn't it?
Right. And you used to drive for him when he was doing some frequency measurements?
He was trying to get measurements for the FM.
Uh-huh.
And we were going almost to Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And I would drive, and Russ would go out in the fields and make a measurement, and then get back in, and so that's what we did. He did that to save the company money, because he'd have to hire somebody, and he liked to do things like that, so he'd rather do it.
And he had the background and the training and the ability to do it.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
He used to commute, right?
He commuted about 4 years. We had just built a house in Fork, and Linda was just a baby, my daughter, our daughter, and I just didn't want to move because her little fingerprints are all around, and I'm so sentimental anyway. But if I had to do it today, I would never make him drive 4 years. It was.
Yeah. Well, you wanted to make sure that it was really going to go, right?
Oh, yes.
You had some doubts, did you?
Oh, yes. Well, we came down Main Street on a Sunday, and I said to Russ, you think this is going to go? And he said, well, there are lots of side streets and lots of business. And I was always kind of thinking of Baltimore and everything, but it took a little while, but it made it.
Yep, it sure did.
Yes, it did.
It's been a nice long haul and an absolute joy to the
Yes.
community.
Oh, yes.
And then there were nights when you had the FCC inspectors around.
Yes, ever so often they had to make inspections of the station. And Russell would keep everything just so. And the FCC knew that he had everything just right. But it would be after midnight when they would do it. He said, Kitty, I'll be home when I get home. So,
I don't know if I shared with you, but I worked in broadcasting for 20 years, not
oh my.
for NBC mainly, but not so much on air. But I sure do remember those FCC inspections
I
and the
sure do.
reports and
Yes.
so on. Boy, you know,
And
piles of paper 3 feet high.
And we passed the station with everything okay. And Russ was one of those kind that made it sure that everything was all right.
So it started as AM, but you got your all your work done and it became an FM station in
Yes.
addition. So it wasn't what they called a daytimer, was it? A daytimer means a station that went off the air when the sun went down.
That's right.
Was it one of those?
That's what we had.
The AM station
Yes,
was
the
a
AM.
was a daytimer, and
Right.
with the FM
No.
all round
it
the clock.
It went by the clock, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of staffing to do, you know, in a small community.
Mm-hmm. Westminster has really grown in all those years.
Yeah. I assume that he had stockholders in this business.
Yes. Yes. They had stockholders.
And
And I
what-
knew all of them
Good.
because most of them were bankers.
Yeah. And what was their investment, the
Well,
share? Do you
They
think?
put in so much, and one person, stockholder, had to sell his stock to pay his taxes one year.
Oh, well,
But anyhow,
I guess it did well.
yes, yes.
People might like to hear about some of the people that worked at the station. They
Was-
might remember them, you know, from
Was
back
Kay
then.
Cobb and Paul Smith. Very good, very good.
And they were on in the morning or afternoons?
They were our
or-
salesmen.
Oh, okay. They brought
Yes,
in
they were.
they brought in the bacon. Okay.
And Russ would say that Kay would put a microphone in front of him and he could ad-lib and it would be just wonderful. And Paul Smith was very good. Paul's been gone now for some years.
Yeah. And Kay Culp, was that a man or a woman?
Male?
Yeah, male. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to know if he was ahead of the curve in hiring women.
No, no, they didn't do much hiring. Russell had a black girl
Uh-huh.
that was very nice, and I saw her not so long ago, and she recognized me. And
That
said
was
her-
special.
Yes.
Now, he had a song that I understand he got very tired.
Irritated, sort of.
Yeah.
And he just went in the control room and broke that record in 1,000 pieces. It was called The Green Door.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And they were just playing it over and over. Well, he got tired of it.
He told him to take it off the playlist, and if they didn't, he was going to do it himself, and he
That's
did,
right. That's right.
Oh, my heavens. And I understand from, what we chatted about a little bit, that he had some restrictions on
Yes,
the
he did.
advertising that he
No
would accept.
beverage, alcoholic beverage,
Uh-huh.
and no tobacco products. And this local ads were substituted in place of those that were
Right.
supposed to be, but
Yeah.
Russ was quite particular about that.
When I worked for WRC in Washington, the network told us that we would start taking Preparation H commercials, and my station manager refused. And because the station was owned by NBC, he almost lost his job. He finally gave in and put them on the air. But
Well, now Russell held right to it.
well, he could. He was the owner.
Yes. Well, Russell was too.
Yeah.
And the stockholders went along with Russ, and we're
Good.
all good friends.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. And you did some sports broadcasting as well?
Yes, the Baltimore Orioles and the Baltimore, not the Annapolis Colts, but were broadcast on WTTR.
Okay. And I
No.
understand you're a football fan?
Oh, I was, and I still love the Ravens, and I like Johnny Unitas. I did know him. I saw him quite often, and I like not the Giants, Ravens, but I like Ray Lewis. They're, he's a wonderful one, and of course Johnny Unitas was the best.
Yeah. And then you used to broadcast the college games?
Yes,
did you?
we did. Hmm.
Well, when I was at WRC, oddly enough in Washington, we carried the Baltimore Colts.
Oh.
And yeah, had some fond memories of some of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Russ, his opposition to alcohol on air, that kind of transferred into another action when he had to fire an announcer.
Yes, we were coming up on 81 one night, and we heard this fellow on the air, and he was slurring his voice, and Russ went right to the station, and his wife was in Baltimore, and she was pleading with Russell to keep him on. Russ said, I cannot afford to have a guy on the air who's been drinking. And he gave him 2 weeks' pay and fired him. So he hated to fire him,
Yeah.
but he just couldn't have that.
Yeah. And then did Russ, he made him leave
Russ
the
went on the
studio,
air,
right?
spinning records, and Kay Cobb and family were going to his family in Mount Airy, and he heard Russ on the air, and he knew there must be something wrong, because Russ very seldom got on the air unless some client wanted him to do an ad for him or everything. So Kay came right back to the station and started, doing announcing, because he was good. But anyhow, it was, Russell said, I can't stand that, to have somebody.
Yeah. And then there was something about alarm systems?
About what?
Alarm systems?
Log?
No, alarm.
Oh, yes, alarm system would ring us first.
Okay.
And I'd grab the phone and I'd say, Russell, don't you go in the building until the police get there. And the police would be there in no time. It was all right. And they broke in the station and they stole some equipment. And the police came and scared them, so they run down the thieves run down in the woods. And later that winter, somebody was down there with a couple of boys, and they found the equipment.
Oh.
Yes, but covered with leaves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it usable?
I think one of the fellows that worked at the station bought the equipment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I know your husband was a real stickler for everything working exactly the way he wanted it to work.
Pronouncing words. Well, one guy called it Chanel #5, and then he called it Channel 5.
Channel 5.
Yes, and Russell really corrected him, because he said there was a lot of that went on, new people coming into Westminster and not knowing how they pronounce the different words.
Right.
But he straightened them out, though, in no time.
That's hard, was even some of the town names, you know, to know how,
Yes.
as a newcomer. I've been here 10 years. And
like, I could name
I had to
them
learn.
and what Russ called them, but, I mean, what the new announcers called them.
Now, during, I actually remember
Do
the
you?
Cuban Missile Crisis, and actually knowing about it through the newsroom before it was public, you know, public knowledge, and it was a pretty scary time in there. But your station,
Fed.
Tell me about your station.
Fed 5 or 6 stations in the suburban area about things, because it seemed like we were just in the right spot to do that.
So you were what was known as a secure broadcast facility, and you could feed the news to the other stations. Do you know if you had? Do you remember Twix machines? Did you have those where the wire, you know, the copy would come over the wire in the newsroom?
We had something similar to that.
Yeah.
I stayed out of the station. I very seldom went over there. I'd go over there maybe once or twice a year, because it was Russell's baby.
Yeah. What kind of programming, what kind of music did they play, or what did they cover?
They had country music, and they had other types of music. I can't just remember what they call them. Oh, it's real nice music.
Okay, easy listening kind of thing?
Yes, it was. Because Russ liked it, and some of his boys that worked at the station liked it too, and they liked to play that type.
And of course you had the news and weather, I'm sure.
Yes.
And
when it was going to snow, they would broadcast whether the schools were going to be closed today or whatever.
Did they have a farm report too?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would imagine.
They covered about everything that really should be covered.
I would imagine in this community at that time, a farm report was an important piece of information for all the agricultural people. Now, you talked about snow. You had kind of a snow event in 1966?
Yes.
And what happened then?
Well, it snowed 2 fellows in. Larry Harkenhone, who's a lawyer now, and Paul Smith were snowed in. And George Greer happened to be in the town. He gave me information about the roads condition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
he was very helpful.
He was a stringer on the roads.
Yes, he was.
Of course, we have a book by George Greer in our library at the Historical Society and for sale in the bookshop.
Oh.
Good book.
Well, I bought a couple of books of George Greer.
Yeah.
He was a good fellow.
Yeah. When things began to change electronically, what did Russ do?
Well, they bought a new system, one of the first kind that was programmed to pull in cassette type tapes that recorded material and advertising for broadcast.
Mm-hmm. And then they
printed records of the activity for billing and other purposes.
And in addition to your commercial station, Russ had a real interest as a ham radio operator?
Ever since 1934, and he made, to get broadcast license, engineering license, he scored the highest grade of the 5 boys that took the exam.
Good for him.
Don't get me started about it, though.
Oh, I don't know. Why not? Do you remember did he have any special friends when on ham
Oh, yes,
radio?
he talked to people all over the world.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they sent cards. And
Confirmation cards.
yes,
Yeah.
with their call letters.
I knew somebody, ham radio operator, who used to be able to talk to another one in Hawaii every morning, because it was, as he went to work, the other fellow was coming home from work. So they really enjoyed that so much. Did you ever meet any of Russ's ham?
Yes.
Did they come to
One
visit?
guy that lived here was so nice, and his name was Mel Galloway.
Oh, okay.
He was such a nice person, and I would go in the room where Russ and he were talking, but I wouldn't get on the air. But I'd sit in the back of the room and I would ad lib, and I could do plenty of that.
That's fun. Now he didn't end his creation of radio stations with
No.
WTTR.
No.
What did he do?
Well, he started WCTR in Chestertown, he and I, and then he built WSER in Elkton, Maryland.
Okay.
He always wanted to do some other things.
What are some of your other memories of those times that you might want to share with us?
Well, I'm 95, and I don't remember too many things. Unless somebody brought it up, I would remember then.
When was it that Russ you all sold the station?
1982. 1982.
82, okay.
82.
82.
I'm sorry.
And of course now we know Pat Sajak owns the station, but
Yes.
there was an interim in between, or no?
And he came to town, and Linda and I had our picture taken with him.
Good.
And he seemed like a very nice man.
I met him when he was here for the anniversary
Oh,
party.
did you?
Yeah.
Well, that's when Linda and I.
Oh, okay. I could have met you then, you see? That
Yes.
would have been very
Yes.
nice. I told him how much I thought of his, of the station and what it did for the community.
Oh, yes.
But we know where it started, and it started with a man named Russ Morgan, and with a lot of good help from his wife, Kitty.
Well, I kept the fires burning at home.
That's
and I
great.
let him do his thing, as the saying goes.
We have some pictures we could show if you could hold up.
Here he is. He was a
Oh, he was a handsome
man.
dude. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, he was.
Well, you have a very attractive daughter, so
Yes, I
you
do.
did well together.
And she looked so much like her daddy.
Yeah.
And she still does resemble Russ a lot.
And the other one, the other picture?
Is Kiwanis. He was a Kiwanian.
Oh, okay. Can you hold it? Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
And there's
hold it?
Arthur Riley.
Okay.
I have to see it, Linda. And Ronnie Wright, and Art Bromwell, and Kay Cobb, and Russ Morgan, and Irv Goodman, who owned the pharmacy here on Main Street at one time,
Okay.
and Johnny Breath, and Paul Smith, WTTR.
That's great.
Yes.
That's a good souvenir. Did you keep any of the old microphones or any of the old equipment at all from the station, or
No.
just went along when
No.
the
Russell wouldn't let me take a record.
Aw.
He said they bought that, so they should have it.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
Mhm.
I suppose. Well, thank you very much for doing this
Well,
for us.
I'm not an announcer, and I'm kind of funny about being around a microphone, but and I stay in the background, I could talk a streak.
Well,
But,
you've done
you
very,
know.
very well.
Yes, well, I hope people understand me at 95 years old.
I think you're pretty darn clear, so
Well,
thank you so much.
I hope so.